I'm going to be turning off the see, the reason you think calling me a parrot head could offend me, but you didn't even do your homework, you don't know your enemy. I grew up in Brazil, and anything about parrots makes me insanely happy. Thanks for paying me to only insult yourself. It's a very zoomed in image of my mouth. I don't understand what's happening right now. Figure this out. Where will we put you? Okay, so I've been doing more live streams where we just talk to YouTube rather than letting people on platforms ask questions. And that's been going pretty well. So, but today is just cult situation report. If I can figure out, is the orientation locked? That's so weird. I wanted to show you my face. My office is not big enough. What I am trying to do. Good morning. Well, it's afternoon where I am. Yeah, I had an interview this morning, so I didn't get to do my live. Got the knitting needles. Okay. Get to go through all the products later. But check out all knitting stickers. Okay. Not gonna be looking very much at y'all. I'm gonna turn y'all comments off. And we begin. Welcome or welcome back to my weekly cult situation report. I am Daniela Mestenek Young, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. I'm former Captain Mestenek in the United States Army. Every week, every Friday in the United States Army, every officer gives a roll up of their week to their boss. As the intelligence officer, the expert on the bad guy, my roll up is all about the bad guys. So, this is my report on everything that happened in the world of cults and in my world of cults. And yes, we will get to the cult of MAGA. Stay tuned. It's less than a week before the culting of America is out. This is my new book, my first book, thrown somewhere else like an unloved first child. My first book is called Uncultured. It is the story of growing up in the Children of God religious cult and then going into the cult of the United States Army. At the end of the culting of America, at the end of Uncultured, I say, none of it is easy to spot, these tactics that cult leaders use. This is my tactics book. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe it doesn't so much matter what you call it as whether you can identify the tactics, techniques, and procedures of the enemy. That, at least, is what they teach us in military intelligence to keep our folks safe. So it is less than a week before the culting of America is out. We could not be more excited. It's a very exciting time for everyone on our team. We're all meeting in DC for the big launch party. It's the first time for me meeting a lot of my team in person, including Amy Reed, who has helped me write not one, not two, but three books. We are also then going to head to a smaller launch party in New York City, but no less fun. Both will feature White Woman Whisperer, who contributed a wonderful essay to the book, and we hope to see some of your lovely faces there. If you're interested in coming to either event, you can find the details for that in the links. The DC one is quite almost full, but it's the day of the walkout. So walk out of your job and come to a book party about America being a cult. The dress code is intergalactic. We are encouraging folks to dress up because, cults always promise space travel. Given next week's schedule, we will not be having a situation report on the 23rd. We know this is very tragic news and you will be disappointed. It will also not be great for us because we'll have to catch up on all of the crazy that happens in the sit rep after that. But we will be busy traveling hither and thither, and so would love for you to all check out Heather Cox Richardson and Amanda's Mild Takes. These women are keeping me sane. They know stuff about parts of what's going on that I don't know, the same way I know stuff about parts of what's going on that they don't know, which is a good time for me to remind you all that nobody has the complete picture of what is going on right now or has the answer to what we need to do. That is because there is no one answer to what we need to do. This is going to be a long fight to claw back freedom, and everyone needs to get involved at their own level. We'll talk about some of that at the end of this as I tell you about the angry knittin'. Okay. The doctrine that drowned them, what the cult behind the killer still doesn't confront about Andrea Yates, who is in the news yet again. Content warning here, the story talks about the murders of young children, so listen or watch with care, please. The cult behind the killer, the Andrea Yates story, reframes one of America's most devastating family annihilation cases through the lens of alleged religious influence, arguing that Andrea Yates' psychosis did not exist in isolation, but was shaped, amplified, and given structure by extremist theology. Yet, even as the docuseries centers preacher Michael Warrenecki as a looming figure, it leaves out critical, disturbing details that deepen the story of systemic failure, unchecked belief, and preventable tragedy. Disclaimer: none of the KCL team has had it in them to watch a documentary on such a tragic incident, as we are deep in book launch territory. So, we are going with what we see in the media and quotes from the relevant parties. Andrea Yates confessed to drowning her five children, Noah, John, Paul, Luke, and infant Mary, on June 20th, 2001, while alone with them in their Texas home. At the time, she was suffering from severe postpartum depression and psychosis, conditions that had plagued her for years and worsened with each pregnancy. What the series only briefly acknowledges is the depth and duration of Andrea's mental illness, which stretched back to her teenage years and included suicide attempts, catatonia, psychiatric medications, hallucinations, repeated hospitalizations, and an ever changing regimen of powerful psychiatric medications. 2 weeks before the killings, she stopped taking Haldol, an antipsychotic drug known to stabilize severe psychosis. The docuseries also sidesteps one of the most haunting decisions in the case: why Andrea and her husband, Rusty Yates, chose to have a fifth child after multiple doctors explicitly warned them not to. Medical professionals testified that another pregnancy would almost certainly trigger a relapse into psychotic depression. Despite this, Andrea became pregnant again, stopped taking medication, and gave birth to Mary, after which her mental state rapidly deteriorated. Rusty later described viewing the risk as comparable to the flu, a miscalculation that would prove catastrophic. Another chilling omission is that doctors warned Rusty not to leave Andrea alone with the children, advice that was ignored on the morning of the killings. Although family members previously coordinated care to ensure Andrea was supervised, she was left alone for a short window of time, long enough for the murders to occur. No charges were ever brought against Rusty. At the center of the docuseries is Michael Warrenecki, an itinerant preacher whose teachings allegedly reinforced Andrea's delusions about sin, damnation, and saving her children from hell. Former followers describe an apocalyptic worldview that weaponized fear and spiritual failure. Andrea reportedly came to believe that her children were doomed because of her own evil, and that killing them before the age of accountability was the only way to save their souls. So, first of all, I'm going to pause for a note here that many children in cults, especially apocalyptic, sin, rah, rah, rah Christian cults, uh, toy with the idea of taking their own lives. In the Children of God, we tend to report suicidal ideology around the ages of 4 to 6. In the mainstream Mormon church, children report suicidal ideology around the ages of 7 to 8. Why is this? That old age of responsibility and the idea that even little children come up with from being religiously traumatized like this, that they would be better off to die before they can commit a sin bad enough to send them to hell. Super harmful ideology. Okay, so obviously it's a bit of a stretch to pin the blame for this solely on this religious guy, as there's medical evidence that Yates suffered from postpartum psychosis after the birth of her fourth child and again following the birth of her fifth child. He has, of course, denied responsibility and even has a section on his website talking about how the documentary is a total smear campaign by his enemies. I'm sorry. When people in the modern world talk about enemies, okay. He was never charged and continues preaching to this day. Like, why do you have enemies? Psychosis is no joke, and it's possible that Andrea would have been triggered by something else without his influence. To us, it seems like one of these both and situations. Warrenecki exhibits some cult leader red flags, but given the number of factors at play here, it's hard to hold him strictly responsible. Taken together, the details left out of the cult behind the killer paint a darker, more unsettling picture, not just of one woman's psychosis, but of a collision between untreated mental illness, reproductive pressure, religious extremism, and repeated institutional failure. It's a story not only about belief, but about what happens when belief is allowed to override medical reality, accountability, and protection to the most vulnerable. And of course, this is a pattern that we see in cults. This is a pattern that I saw with my own mother in a cult. Cults hate medical care, and cults love to keep you pregnant all of the time. And when those two things conflict, the woman is often expected to risk herself and have the next baby anyway. Obviously, it can have tremendously terrible results. Benue police crack down on cult groups. 3 arrested, firearms and drugs seized. We are back in Nigeria this week. We haven't yet found ourselves a Nigeria expert who can help us get a better cultural understanding here, but we are looking. In the meantime, let's unpack what we can. Authorities in Benue State, Nigeria, have stepped up efforts to curb cultism and violent crime, arresting 3 suspected cult members in separate operations over the past few weeks, seizing firearms, knives, and hard drugs. The first operation occurred in Vandel local government area after police received intelligence about armed suspects allegedly planning violent activity. Officers arrested Dominic Turka Peter, 30, and Sunday Tarivi, 31, recovering a locally fabricated revolver and a jackknife. Police indicated the swift response was part of ongoing initiatives to dismantle criminal networks and enhance community safety. A second operation took place in Yelawada, Guma, LGA, where intelligence suggested cult members were planning attacks against rival groups and civilians in the Udai area. Police apprehended Minyam Turnagi, recovering a cutlass, a knife, and hard drugs. Preliminary investigations revealed that Turnagi confessed to membership in the MBS cult group. Other suspected members reportedly fled the scene. The suspects are currently in custody and the investigations have been transferred to the State Criminal Investigation Department in Makurdi. Police confirmed ongoing efforts to locate and arrest the remaining fleeing suspects. Benue State Police Commissioner CP Ifaniye Eminari reaffirmed the command's commitment to eradicating cultism and all forms of criminality in the state, urging residents to provide timely and credible information to assist law enforcement. These arrests follow a broader crackdown on cult related crimes and highlight the persistent threat posed by secretive and armed groups in Nigeria, which continue to fuel violence, intimidation, and public insecurity in local communities. Also, I think every time the police interact with cults, it's an interesting reminder for everyone that cults are organized crime. Cults are groups that coerce and manipulate you in order to exploit your labor. There's always a product or a service that they sell, and they are organized crime, which is also the way to go after them. This is why the IRS took down Al Capone. I learned that from my cult leader. Okay, we are very interested in gaining a better understanding of what's going on with cults in Nigeria. So, if anyone knows of someone who can speak to that topic from either a personal or academic perspective, we would love to talk to them, maybe have them on the podcast. You can email admin@uncultureyourself.com. We will be back inside the cult retaliation campaign against a BBC journalist. Over in England, there's been some backlash against the BBC by members of a self help group called Lighthouse, who were unhappy with how they were portrayed in the documentary and podcast called A Very British Cult. Christopher Deitchler, Jatinder Kamra, and Sukraj Singh were found guilty of harassment without violence after a months long campaign against Catherine Nye, who presented the BBC documentary and podcast. The series examined Lighthouse, a self improvement group whose leadership was accused by former members of abusive and coercive behavior toward those who attempted to leave. The court heard that Lighthouse's hostility toward Nye began before the documentary was even released, escalating after the broadcast on into protests outside BBC headquarters. While these demonstrations were initially lawful, they quickly took on a sinister tone. Placards accused Nye and the BBC of shielding child abusers and racists, and group members chanted slogans like Stop Pedophilia at the BBC, publicly vilifying a journalist for doing her job. This was a smart strategy by Lighthouse. The BBC has a very problematic history of covering up crimes against children, notably when they failed to intervene to stop serial abuser Jimmy Savile. Seville's crimes understandably cast a long shadow, so we think it was clever, if somewhat unethical, to sow public distrust of Nye by associating her with Seville. Eventually, though, the protests crossed the legal line when they pivoted to targeting Nye at her home, where she lives with her children. The aforementioned men hired a private investigator to locate Nye's address. This is straight out of the cult handbook. Then they appeared outside her house multiple times, filming themselves ringing the doorbell and claiming to be delivering a Bible and a letter. When no one answered, they leafleted her neighbors with her name and photograph. On one occasion, they returned early in the morning and waited until Nye's partner had left with their two small children before approaching again. Instead of leaving the Bible and letter, they left an unsigned note with a chilling message. They would be back. In court, the defendants framed their actions as citizen journalism and likened themselves to David fighting Goliath. Oh, the old favorite analogy of a cult. But the judge rejected that narrative, ruling the visits were intimidatory, retaliatory, and designed to punish Nye for her reporting. The court concluded that what might have been a protest crossed into harassment once it invaded her private life and endangered her sense of safety. Nye and her partner testified, shielded from direct view, about the impact on their family. They installed CCTV and a ring doorbell. Nye described becoming fearful of leaving the house with her children, reduced to a constant state of paranoia. The harassment did not just target a journalist, it targeted a home, a family, and children. The defendants claimed the documentary destroyed their livelihoods and demanded apologies, compensation, and public retractions. And again, this is the whole legitimate thing. If somebody slanders you and destroys your livelihood, then the correct thing to do is to pursue them in court. It is not to terrorize them. It's valid, it stands up to scrutiny. But the court heard that Lighthouse's leader had been given multiple opportunities to participate in the program and declined or made unreasonable demands, including requests for hours of live primetime television. In delivering her verdict, the judge made clear that this was not journalism, protest, or accountability, it was revenge. The case illustrates a recurring cult dynamic. When exposed, the group reframes itself as the victim, casts critics as enemies, and escalates pressure until fear replaces scrutiny. The guilty verdicts affirm a fundamental principle that a free press cannot exist if journalists are stalked, threatened, and terrorized into silence for revealing uncomfortable truths. The three men will be sentenced in February. For Lighthouse, the case now stands as a public record not only of the allegations raised in a very British cult, but of how the group responded when the spotlight refused to turn away. This story is familiar to anyone who studies high control groups. Investigation is met not with accountability, but with intimidation, obsession, and retaliation. This is also why it's just so boring and unoriginal. Every time cult experts look at a group and call it a cult, and they'll turn around and go, "Yeah, you're a cult leader. No, you are." It's so boring, so unoriginal. It's like that military intelligence oxymoron joke. Like, please come up with something new. Cults can be dangerous to people beyond the physical or metaphorical compound walls. And whistleblowers of all kinds, journalists or lawyers, for example, might find themselves targets of harassment or worse. Think Scientology's fair game policy. And we have a link to that in the show notes if you'd like to read more about it. As far as we know, there's no reason to think that Nye had any involvement in abusing children. And again, usually with groups like this, every accusation is a confirmation of what they are doing themselves. Also, the cult of MAGA has recently sent the FBI to go harass a journalist. If this sounds to you like the exact same thing, yes, yes, you are right. Cult of MAGA. This article was originally in last week's Cult Sit Rep, but we cut it because there was so much to cover. But several of you have asked about it, and we aim to please. Trump proposes $1.5 trillion military budget for 2027, citing dangerous times. President Donald Trump on Wednesday, last plus one, proposed a massive increase in US defense spending, setting the 2027 military budget at 1.5 trillion, up from 901 billion in 2026. Trump justified the surge by citing troubled and dangerous times following the high-profile capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and ongoing US military deployments in the Caribbean. The president framed the spending boost as a way to create a dream military capable of keeping the nation safe from foes, while also threatening military contractors like Raytheon to reinvest profits into weapons manufacturing rather than stock buybacks. An executive order directs the Pentagon to monitor underperforming defense firms and impose stricter requirements on contracts, tying executive incentives to actual production instead of short term financial gains. The proposed increase has sparked debate. Democrats are expected to resist excessive defense spending, while some GOP deficit hawks may push back despite Trump's claims that tariff revenues, which rose from 98.3 billion in 2024 to 28 to 288.5 billion in 2025, can cover the new expenditures. It's not looking great for folks who thought Trump was going to reduce the price of eggs or otherwise slash their daily living expenses. Oops. Turns out cult leaders lie. Uh, Trump also suggested a broader global posture, hinting at potential operations or influence in Greenland, Colombia, and Cuba, signaling an assertive interventionist foreign policy. The amount comes amid growing scrutiny of defense contractors' production timelines for key military hardware, including missiles and aircraft engines essential to U.S. military readiness. The proposal represents the largest defense budget in US history, reflecting the administration's focus on projecting power abroad and asserting control over domestic military industrial priorities. Of course, we hate it all. The bad guy is doing bad guy things. Anything less is unacceptable. Trump's Greenland fixation and politics of possession. A high level meeting meant to cool tensions instead revealed just how immovable President Trump's worldview has become. After Danish and US officials met at the White House over the growing standoff in Greenland, there was no shift in Trump's position, only a reaffirmation of it. Full US control of Greenland, he insists, is not negotiable. Anything less, in his words, is unacceptable. Denmark's foreign ministers Lars Loke Rasmussen left the White House openly acknowledging a fundamental disagreement. He described Trump's stance not as a policy dispute, but as a belief, one rooted in the idea that America must conquer Greenland to save it from China and Russia. Diplomatic arguments, legal realities, and allied objections failed to move the president. Not listening to experts. Such a sign of cult leaders. Trump reinforced his position publicly, declaring that the United States needs Greenland for national security and again refusing to rule out military force. Denmark, he claims, is simply incapable of defending the island. If the US doesn't act, Trump warned, Russia and China will. In response, Denmark and its NATO allies began signaling unity through force. Several NATO countries, including Germany, France, and Sweden, announced plans to send troops, aircraft, and reconnaissance units to Greenland as part of Danish led military exercises. The deployments were framed as defensive and cooperative, but their timing underscored the seriousness of the crisis. NATO allies mobilizing not against an external enemy, but amid fears of coercion from within the alliance itself. Greenland's leaders were equally direct. Standing alongside Rasmussen, Greenland's foreign minister, Vivian Motzfeldt, made clear that while cooperation with Washington is welcome, ownership is not. Greenland, she said, does not want to be owned by the United States. Trump's promises of economic benefit and protection have so far failed to win over the island's population of roughly 56,000. Despite the creation of a US Danish working group meant to explore possible compromise, there's little indication one exists. Trump's demand for ownership appears fundamentally incompatible with Denmark's refusal to sell or surrender territory it has governed for centuries, now largely self governing and on a gradual path toward independence. The president's confidence appears fueled by recent military successes, including the dramatic US operation to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Trump referenced Venezuela when defending his Greenland stance, implying that American power, once demonstrated, resolves objections. To allies watching closely, the message was unmistakable. Resistance is temporary, dominance is inevitable. European leaders are increasingly alarmed, of course. The idea that a NATO member might forcibly seize a territory from another NATO member is unprecedented in the alliance's 75-year history. While Republicans dismiss invasion talk as bluster, Trump himself continues to frame ownership as not merely strategic, but psychological. He has described possession of Greenland as something needed for success, without fully explaining why. And this is because he is not logical. Gotta stop listening to him. Experts acknowledge Greenland's strategic importance in the Arctic as melting ice opens new shipping lanes and resource opportunities. But many question whether Trump's fixation is driven more by ideology than security, a worldview in which control equals safety and dominance equals order. For now, diplomacy continues. Meetings with Congress are scheduled, delegations will travel, statements will be issued. But beneath the formal language, a deeper fracture is visible. One side arguing sovereignty, alliance norms, and cooperations, while the other insists that belief, force, and ownership are the only guarantees of security. And as Trump repeats his mantra, anything less is unacceptable, the standoff over Greenland increasingly resembles not a negotiation, but a test of loyalty, power, and submission in a rapidly reshaping world order. Talent manager Lizzie would like to point out that she's pleased to see that loathsome Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, who bootlicked his way to special envoy to Greenland appointment, was not mentioned even once in the New York Times article we used as a source for the Situation Report. When asked to comment on Landry's apparent lack of relevance to this story, Lizzie said, and this is a direct quote, ha ha ha. She went on to elaborate. He was left out of the article, and I bet that annoys him so much. It's extra good because a different Louisiana politician did get quoted. The equally awful Senator John Kennedy thinks Trump isn't stupid enough to be serious about taking Greenland. But I think Kennedy might be wrong as usual. Trump's stupidity knows no bounds. Lizzie would like to note that John Kennedy is not related to the Kennedy in the cabinet, who also just revised the food pyramid. Also, that Louisianans would like to compare John Kennedy to the actual Looney Tunes character Foghorn Leghorn, as they are both tedious, hokey chickens. And let me talk about Greenland now. Trump apparently asked the military to make invasion plans for him to go to Greenland. Who called this a week ago? Oh, yes, it was me. And if you all recall, I used Greenland specifically as an example of if Trump tried to order the military to prepare an invasion to Greenland, I expected the military to say no, and they did. Why is this? Well, it is an obviously illegal order on the face because an invasion cannot be planned in less than 48 hours. And anything that takes longer than 48 hours under the authorized use of military force, AUMF, Congress needs to be involved. So the military said, no, we're not going to do it. And I've been telling you all this over and over, right? And every time I say there's no way to make a successful plan for martial law, you say, but they could try. One cannot try a military operation that one cannot make a plan for. And every time I say they're not going to legally allow him to do this, y'all say Trump doesn't care about the law, but the military does. And they have repeatedly shown this to him over and over again. I did have a realization yesterday, and I think that what civilians think the military is ICE. Like the person that joins ICE, that's who y'all think all veterans are. And that buffoonery, untrained bullshit, that's what y'all think the military is. And I cannot express enough how wrong that is. The military is a professionalized, very diverse force of 1.3 million American and immigrant men and women who are dedicated and highly trained to defend the country. And I made a whole video about this, but ice slipping on the ice, y'all, that's why they lose. There's not a staff sergeant in the United States Army that would let a private or a lieutenant slip on the ice and fall on their ass during a mission with a loaded weapon. Are you kidding me? That's both because we are trained and well prepared, and also because we are always either an elbow's length or arm's length from each other and can grab you up. Because that is training, and that is how the United States military operates. These ice jokers with their little penises and their 47 days of training because that's their cult leader's number. Slave catcher bullshit. That's what they are. They're Confederates. They're not soldiers. Okay. Thank you. I think it is very, very important for civilians to consistently remind yourself that you do not understand the military and then listen to those of us who do. The three different military things that we have just seen are all very important. Okay. First, we saw the double tap shooting, right? And one of the things I hoped y'all would notice is that every single person with experience around military anything or law anything came out and said war crime altogether. Nobody's here defending the military. I have written two extremely critical books about the United States military, but we all came out and said war crime. Venezuela thing, very different, right? Also, with this war crime, it was very significant that it was the type of war crime where one dude tells one dude to tells one dude to push a button. Okay. That is very, very different than taking a military brigade and conducting combat operations, which is, you know, how things go with invasions and such like. Okay. Then we see the Venezuela thing, which still we have not gotten a complete answer on. But anyone talking to you about the military and says that was illegal, they know that that unit doesn't fly without legal clearance. They know that no military unit flies without legal clearance, and they are bullshitting you. I believe Trump is going to continue to use the military broadly to stir up international violence in very questionable ways. And I think part of why he's doing it is for this reaction from the American civilians. Because the military is a professionalized force full of American citizens who do not want to and have refused to be weaponized by a tyrant. And the tyrant doesn't like that. But the amount of fuck y'all, fuck the military, fuck everyone that has come from American civilians since he started doing this is pretty significant. Oh, plus way to neutralize the 15 million veterans out here who are certainly not all on his side. He's trying to turn the people against the military and against veterans, and some of y'all are eating right into his hands. Remember the squeaky tank. And remember when you tried to go into Greenland and the military leader said, ew, no. Okay. Tragedy and confusion in Minneapolis. It's time to talk about Minneapolis, which has been the site of a lot of tragedy and tension over the past week. Before we talk about this week's ICE related shootings in Minneapolis, we of course need to mention the tragic death of Renee Good, who was murdered by ICE last week. There are a lot of hot takes on this topic, with everything from the legal nuances to how folks are conditioned to interpret the video footage under scrutiny and up for debate. By the way, in case you didn't know, when it comes to video footage, the hot take I'm referring to is my own, as featured in the Huffington Post. Link in the bio, in the show notes. I've been making content about this all week since it happened, covering lots of different aspects of the story, including how quickly the narrative sought to other Renee and distance her from the pure white women archetype. I want to remind everyone that Renee Good's murderer was not a soldier in the army or a service member of any branch of the armed forces. He was a member of Trump's ballooning ICE force, which operates under a different mandate and which is operating in a gray area that I don't think we will fully appreciate for another 5 to 10 years. Oh, and ICE is actively recruiting. We recommend you read this story in Slate by Laura Jadid, another left leaning veteran who deployed to Afghanistan twice, like me. Jadid applied for a job with ICE and, despite her very public history of Trump regime criticism, ended up with a job offer, which she declined. Jadid's article is very interesting. She talks about how empty the recruiting event she attended was and how absurdly little effort she put in to be offered a job with ICE. She reflects on how there's a temptation to take some comfort in ICE's sloppiness. There's a real argument here that an agency so inept in its recruitment will also be inept at training people and carrying out its mission. We're seeing some very sloppy police work from ICE, including an inability to do basic things like throw someone down and cuff them. On some level, all of this is a reminder that their takeover is neither total nor inevitable, but also how the sloppiness is terrifying in that it means that really anyone, domestic abuser, white nationalist, your everyday loser with an inferiority complex, might find themselves in a position of power and authority over vulnerable populations. It's an interesting and thought provoking article that provides some context into what's going on in Minneapolis this week. The second ICE involved shooting in less than a week took place on Wednesday, January 14th. A late night immigration enforcement operation in Minneapolis has escalated into another flashpoint in America's widening conflict over law enforcement, immigration, and political loyalty. According to the Department of Homeland Security, a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, agent was ambushed Wednesday evening while attempting to arrest a Venezuelan national, prompting the agent to fire his weapon in what DHS described as a life threatening attack. The incident began around 6:50 p.m. during a traffic stop targeting a Venezuelan national. Authorities report that the suspect attempted to flee, crashing into a parked vehicle before escaping on foot. When an ICE agent caught up with him and attempted to take him into custody, the situation allegedly turned violent. According to DHS, the suspect resisted arrest and assaulted the agent. As the two struggled on the ground, two additional individuals reportedly emerged from a nearby apartment and joined the attack, striking the agent with a snow shovel and a broom handle. DHS claims the original suspect then re engaged in the assault, also wielding a shovel or a broom handle against the officer. Fearing for his life, allegedly, the agent fired defensive shots, striking the suspect in the leg. The injured suspect was later reported to be in stable condition and taken into custody, along with two other individuals involved. All three reportedly barricaded themselves inside the apartment before being arrested. The agent was transported to a hospital for treatment, and federal authorities framed the incident as part of a broader pattern of escalating violence against law enforcement. DHS stated that assaults on federal officers have increased by more than 1,300%, describing the Minneapolis attack as emblematic of a dangerous climate facing immigration officers nationwide. But their response did not stop the facts of the incidents. Federal officials quickly widened the narrative, placing political blame on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. DHS accused the state's top leaders of encouraging an organized resistance to ICE, arguing that their rhetoric has contributed to an environment where federal officers are targeted. Whew. Ay, ay, ay. Sorry. It's worth noting that CNN, which is rated as mostly factual by media biasfactcheck.com when it comes to straight news reporting, as opposed to moderately left center bias when it comes to editorial programming, specifically stated in the article we sourced for this sitrep that the federal government's narrative could not immediately be verified. It is important that they said this because we know this administration excels at propaganda, but in this context, it's also chilling. Outside the immediate scene, protests erupted in Minneapolis, underscoring how quickly enforcement actions now bleed into public unrest. For supporters of ICE, the incident reinforces a worldview in which officers are besieged heroes operating in hostile territory. For critics, it raises fresh concerns about militarized policing, inflammatory rhetoric, and the consequences of escalating force. What remains clear is that the shooting is no longer just an isolated law enforcement encounter. It has been absorbed into a larger story, one defined by us versus them language, loyalty tests, and claims of existential threat. In that story, every incident becomes proof of a pre existing belief that the nation is under siege, that authority is under attack, and that force is not justified, but inevitable. Now, Donald Trump has said he wants to invoke the Insurrection Act for Minnesota. What does this mean? The courts have already told him that the Insurrection Act is not applicable to what is going on in the United States right now. He, of course, is instigating so he can try to make the case. It should seem very clear, and we are all going to find out what happens together. Trump's declarations change nothing about logistics in the United States. Now they're talking about going from Minneapolis into Maine. And y'all should go watch Heather Cox Richardson's live from yesterday. She talks about like when your show of force is going into Maine, like the numbers are not working out for him. There's no way that ICE wins this. We are beginning to see the beginning of the American insurgency being born. We just saw a 21-year-old protester yesterday lose an eye fighting ICE. We're seeing people coordinate and start fighting back, right? I have been telling you all that there is no way for the federal government to hold the United States by force, right? Not military, not everyone that they can touch that has a gun. You cannot be done. However, I would also like to remind you something that Heather Cox Richardson reminded me of. There's no way the federal government can run the country. There are not enough people, not enough workers, not enough police, not enough anything, right? It doesn't work. Things are coming to a head. Heather Cox Richardson had predicted that things were going to get really ugly, and probably by May we would know what the outcome of this all is. But things are escalating faster than almost anyone has predicted. Welcome y'all toward our march toward dictatorship. I remind you, nobody has a complete perspective right now, so it's really important to be listening to a lot of different people. Question of the week is from various people on the internet who asked me how I got my rainbow unicorn hair. Was it a kit? Did I pick each color individually? The answer is none. I went to a salon. Um, Many of you love it, and I do too. Word of caution is it takes a lot of maintenance. And also, I didn't do it all at once. If you have been with me, we started with a small green streak, and then as that grew out, we mixed in the teal and the magenta to match this flag. And then last time we put in the orange, and then this time we added the yellow and the lime green down here for the complete look. I'm very in love with the rainbow hair. It's brilliant for branding. It makes me easily identifiable. And MAGA pays me so much money every week to tell me how stupid my hair is. Yeah, really stupid. All right. I get my hair done in Bananas in College Park, Maryland. And then this also color only looks good for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then I just mix in colors from, whatever I can get from a beauty supply store until it's time to go do the roots again. I think I'll keep it. All right, so for Knit In News, the social media toolkit is live on the site, which will be linked in the video description. On my other channels, it is linked in the bio. For those of you who want to share the event and the community. If you're curious about what we're stitching together, our Discord is a great place to start. For those of you unfamiliar with Discord, it's a messaging platform you can use to talk to the whole Knit In community about a range of topics. Folks there are already building community around art, music, politics, craftivism, and other things. It's lovely to see. It really reinforces why we're doing this in the first place. So far, nearly 400 of you have signed up to be with us in person. I did not know that, which is amazing. We are currently discussing the best way to live stream the event for those of you who are interested in participating remotely. One of the things we are fundraising for is to make sure we can pay good videographers to capture the event, to live stream, because obviously the following here is national and even international. Um, if you are going to participate in person, the tickets are free, but please come get a ticket so that we can keep our count. You can also choose to donate at that point. We would love your support. Um, Bigger space we can have, the more money we can pass on to organizations doing good work. So we have a Better World page that we are raising money for. We've also created these exclusive Knit In stickers. This one says, "Not Today Fascism." And this one says not today fascism, but it's a knitting frog. And we'll FDT down there in the corner. The significance of the frog is that in many of the fiber arts, frogging is when you are ripping out your mistakes. So we are going to frog democracy. Profits. So like this is my fundraiser. Every bit of profit is going from the Knitting Call Lady brand to the Knit In. You can buy them at regular price or you can buy them at higher price points to help us raise more funds. It is all in the shops and will be linked here. Um, as far as action items go, once you've joined our Discord, we encourage you to check out the Call Your Reps channel to get moral and tactical support for contacting your reps about the issues that are most important to you. Everybody who is out there who is familiar with organizing says, call your reps. It is not nothing and it is not too late. On the Knit In site, we have a whole page of you want to get involved, where you are. There's an amazing volunteer team that is putting a bunch of resources together because we are trying to focus on civic education and how we can get involved. So, to recap your Knit In action items for this week, donate or buy a sticker if you can, and join our Discord community, which is, of course, free. Events. We have the Culting of America virtual book launch party for the GoFundMe donors. We appreciate you so, 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 so much. That is January 20th at 12 p.m. EST. We are going to try to record it for those who can't make it and send it out later. We are going to have the Culting of America book launch party that evening, January 20th at 5 p.m. College Park, Maryland. It's a Tuesday. It's a school night. I know. That's when books come out. For our advanced cult book club or cult theory book club, we are meeting the next day, Wednesday, January 21st. We meet virtually at 6:30 p.m. EST. People ask me for recommended lists all the time. This is just another way that you can get involved with the deconstruction community. Our book club is a $10 Patreon membership. We meet the second Wednesday to discuss a memoir and the third Wednesday to discuss a theory book. This time we are finishing up the last third of Howard Zinn's A People's History of Empire, which is the graphic novel. And then we are moving on to Culting of America for our second theory book. Hey. Um, January Da-da-da-da-da. We have a cult club happy hour coming up that is also in College Park, Maryland on January 29th. If you want to get on our regular happy hour email list, you can send an email to admin@uncultureyourself.com. January 31st, I have the virtual Stitch and Bitch. That is a $25 Patreon level membership. You can join us there. February 7th, we got the Women Veterans Call. I'm also doing an author talk at the Connie Morelia Library on March 21st. That's in like Bethesda, Maryland, I believe, 2 p.m. EST. All of this information you can find in the show notes or in my bio. I'm also going to be probably doing an event in LA, Hollywood in early April. So stay tuned. And I'm going to be doing an event in Dallas, Arlington area on April 16th. Podcast this week on Hey White Women. Rebecca and I talked about why white America and especially white women struggle so much with community resistance and sustained action, and how deeply cult dynamics show up in our politics, our patriotism, and even our attempts at allyship. We dug into how deconstruction isn't just about learning new facts, it's about losing certainty, pride, and sometimes people. And why so many folks get stuck in fear, victimhood, or performative relief instead of doing the harder relational work. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, and it doesn't come with any easy heroes, but that's kind of the point. If we're serious about change, we have to be willing to stay grounded, be wrong, be disliked, and keep showing up anyway. And also, speaking of white women, we're activating the Brigade of Britneys. I didn't think our first mission was going to be dispersed, but like, white ladies, got to get out there on the streets. You got to put your bodies in between ICE and the vulnerable people that they're targeting. We got to get out to the protests. We got to call them on their frickin' bluff. Thanks for doing the hard work, and I will certainly see you out there. And Mr. Knitting Cult Lady might be buying a motorcycle to go monitor ice, let's say. All right, if you have a last minute hankering to donate to the Culting of America, which truly is a perfect book to be coming out right at this time, your time is now. We're closing the GoFundMe on the 20th when the book comes out. Thank you so much for helping me do this. Putting out an indie book that is good and high quality is a very big deal. And I really appreciate all of y'all's financial support, but also all of y'all's emotional and just like awesome support over the last 3 years as I have written this book and shared pieces of it with you all, and you all gave me your feedback and helped me make it an even better book. I'm so incredibly grateful, and I'm so excited that you all are receiving it. Y'all are like sending me photos. There's no such thing as too many photos of my baby in the world. So thank you. Thank you. This really is the last 3 years of my life. Isn't she pretty? Credits. The Sit Rep is produced by the Knitting Cult team. Lead writing and research is by Megan Pickman, my fearless admin. Features content contributions by Haley Phillips, our podcast producer, and the Angry Knit In Planning Committee. The supervising producer is Lizzie Freudman. The song of the week. This week's song is Rah Rah Rasputin by West Germany band Bonnie M. Did we pick it because we think Rasputin was a co-leader? No. Or rather, well, it does seem like Rasputin was a charismatic leader who dabbled in coercive control. That's not why we picked the song. We picked it because Lizzie likes it. The unexpected combination of a Russian history lesson, a disco beat, and a serious spoken word bridge is just irresistibly charming to Lizzie, even if it fumbles some historical details. 2 years ago, when things were hard in Lizzie's life, she listened to this song a lot and it always made her smile. We hope there can be a similarly effective pick me up for those of you who do need one today. However, Rasputin, definitely a cult leader. That was definitely a sex cult. And also, my cult leader, David Burke, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, believed that Rasputin was his magic spirit helper. Always beware about people that know a lot about the bad guys. People say, does that mean you should beware of me? Yes, if I decided to build a cult, it would be the best one. So if I invite you to my commune, maybe don't come. And now for some nitpicking. Okay, so of course, I made the earrings out of fabric. I made the love bomb collar, my little dragonfly. I love this guy. This I'm making. I got this scarf at the DC Eastern Market. We call this the love again. I just take a scarf and cut armholes in it and then put stuff on it. Um, Here's a pair of very cool cuffs that I made from a child's red velvet dress. And okay, this is the crochet along with me shirt that we are doing one row at a time, and I'm posting videos of how to do it. It's going to be my outfit for the knit in. Each row is taking longer and longer. This is my love bomb collar for the book party, along with a pair of shiny sleeves that I made. I just take a scarf and crochet the ends together, and then it's wearable. And here is another set of sleeves that I'm making for my adopted mama that I'm going to see in Dallas. And this week I was just like finishing up all my colorful products to get ready to start switching to space travel. Here are two things. Took this Michael Kors shirt. It is very, very shiny. And I chopped off the sleeves and I put silver there. And then I made these cuffs with the sleeves. Mhm. And then with the stuff from the shoulders, I'm gonna make like earrings that match. And I'm gonna wear that with silver pants for my New York party. But this one, y'all, this one. This was an 8-year-old's jacket, by the way. But now I think maybe it's my fascism fighting outfit. So I'm going to Wow, one of my good friends here is here for the party, who's also a photographer. I'm going to have her help me photograph a whole bunch of stuff that I've been needing to put in the shop. But stay tuned. I've been collecting for about 5 months now. I've been collecting both costumes and craft things for space travel era. Tomorrow, it begins. Thank you all for hanging out with me. Oh, wait. Let's show you the sticker products. All right, so we have the sword knitting needles, dreamed up by Knitting Cult Baby. And also, look how cool my branding is. It says Knitting Cult Lady. And then on this inside of it, this thing also makes a good like bookmark. And says, I knit so I don't stab people. And if you are a good enough knitting person or cross stitch person, that's just a pattern. You can just make that. Okay, then we've got one of my favorite things. We have these both as stickers and iron-on patches. So these look just like the soldier flags that we wear, but of course they're in my rebellious covers. Not the rebel flag, the rebellious flag. Taking it back. Cults always promise space travel bumper sticker. We have a day. We have standalone packs of these and also a whole sticker pack. Knitting is Morse code because it is. I knit so I don't stab people. Knitting Cult Lady brand. And that, friends, is what I have for you today. We also, due to popular demand, have the deconstruction workbook standalone that you can purchase if you didn't purchase the bundle with it, or you decide you want it now, or you just need multiples. I've been working through mine and I'm glad I created that. It has been helping me as I'm deconstructing Swiftianity and white womanhood and I hope you all will get something out of it too. Thanks so much. Have a day. So much talking. So much talking. Right. Thanks, y'all. Know how to. Gotta be